gāyantya uccair amum eva saṁhatā vicikyur unmattaka-vat vanād vanam papracchur ākāśa-vat antaraṁ bahir bhūteṣu santaṁ puruṣaṁ vanaspatīn gāyantya uccair amum eva saṁhatā vicikyur unmattaka-vat vanād vanam papracchur ākāśa-vat antaraṁ bahir bhūteṣu santaṁ puruṣaṁ vanaspatīn gāyantya uccair amum eva saṁhatā vicikyur unmattaka-vat vanād vanam papracchur ākāśa-vat antaraṁ bahir bhūteṣu santaṁ puruṣaṁ vanaspatīn gāyantya uccair amum eva saṁhatā vicikyur unmattaka-vat vanād vanam papracchur ākāśa-vat antaraṁ bahir bhūteṣu santaṁ puruṣaṁ vanaspatīn
gāyantya uccair amum eva saṁhatā
gāyantya uccair amum eva saṁhatā
vicikyur unmattaka-vat vanād vanam
vicikyur unmattaka-vat vanād vanam
papracchur ākāśa-vat antaraṁ bahir
papracchur ākāśa-vat antaraṁ bahir
bhūteṣu santaṁ puruṣaṁ vanaspatīn
bhūteṣu santaṁ puruṣaṁ vanaspatīn. Ladies. Gāyantya uccair amum eva saṁhatā vicikyur unmattaka-vat vanād vanam papracchur ākāśa-vat antaraṁ bahir bhūteṣu santaṁ puruṣaṁ vanaspatīn gāyantya uccair amum eva saṁhatā vicikyur unmattaka-vat vanād vanam papracchur ākāśa-vat antaraṁ bahir bhūteṣu santaṁ puruṣaṁ vanaspatīn gāyantyaḥ, singing, uccaiḥ, loudly, amum, about him, eva, indeed, saṁhatāḥ, together in a group, vicikyuḥ, they searched, unmattaka-vat, like madwomen, vanāt vanam, from one area of the forest to another. Papracchur, they inquired. Ākāśa-vat, like the sky. Antaraṁ, internally. Bahir, and externally. Bhūteṣu, in all created beings. Santaṁ, present. Puruṣaṁ, the Supreme Person. Vanaspatīn, from the trees. Translation. Singing loudly of Krishna, they searched for him throughout the Vrindavana forest like a band of madwomen. They even asked the trees about him, who, as the Supersoul, is present inside and outside of all created things, just like the sky. Please repeat. Singing loudly of Krishna, they searched for him throughout the Vrindavana forest, like a band of mad women. They even asked the trees about him, who as the Supersoul is present inside and outside of all created things, just like the sky. Purport. Lost in the madness of love for Krishna, the gopis inquired about him from even the trees of Vrindavan. Of course, there is no actual separation from Lord Krishna, since he is the all-pervading Supersoul. And the next verse, Drishtova kachit ashvata plaksha nyagrodha no manaha nanda sunur gato hritva prema hasa avalokanahi. The gopis said, O Ashvata tree, O Plaksha, O Nyagrodha, have you seen Krishna? That son of Nanda Maharaj has gone away after stealing our minds with his loving smiles and glances. Om Jnana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Chalakshaya Chakshurun Militang Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtang Stapitang Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yata Padakamalang Shri Gurun Vaishnavangscha Shri Rupam Sakrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitang Tang Sajivam Sadvetam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhan Vitangscha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So it's my wonderful good fortune to be present here in the most holy place in the universe, Sri Vrindavan Dham, among assembly of sincere Vaishnava followers of Srila Prabhupada, and here in ISKCON's wonderful temple, and to have the opportunity to discuss Srimad Bhagavatam with all of you, and try to please Srila Prabhupada in that way. So, Lord Chaitanya taught 5 conclusions. That the goal of life is prema pumartha mahan. The other 4 purusharthas pale in comparison to actual Krishna prema, the 5th purushartha taught by Lord Chaitanya. And the second thing he taught was that the most worshipful Lord is Lord Sri Krishna. Lord Krishna in Vrindavan, he's the original, what does it say? Eta Changshakala Pungsang. Krishna's tu Bhagavan Swayam. He's the original avatari, and his, if you examine it by rasology, by Rupa Goswami teaches us that the rasas he exchanges with his devotees in Vrindavan are more complete, more full. They include the other rasas that people experience worshipping Narayan or even Lord Ramachandra, but they include more, and he's more full. Rupa Goswami describes that of the 60 qualities that Lord Vishnu can have, that Krishna has 4 additional qualities. That he has an especially beautiful form, he has especially sweet pastimes, and especially loving devotees, and he plays the flute. Here he's called the gopis for the Rasa Leela with his flute. The third conclusion is that the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Amala Purana, is the highest scripture, the greatest authority, the spotless Purana. And the fourth conclusion is that the most worshipful abode is Vrindavan Dham. And at last, the most exalted method of worshiping Krishna, the best method of worshiping Krishna of all, is that displayed by the gopis of Vrindavan. So we have the fortune to be speaking about these 5 confidential chapters of the Srimad Bhagavatam. We should understand how exalted the gopis are and their love for Krishna. Of course, we can't even, at least speaking for myself, I can't even have any realization of what their gopis are feeling like in their mood of separation, in their anxiety. But we should meditate on these things. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that of all the yogis, the devotees are the greatest. Shraddhavan bhajate yomam samayuktatamo mataha. They're most intimately united with him in yoga, those who perform devotional service with great faith. And but of these great devotees, greatest yogis, the gopis are the greatest of all. And we can see in their mood how infinitely devoted they are to Lord Krishna. We've been given some warnings. We've all heard from Srila Prabhupada not to jump ahead and just read these chapters. But Srila Prabhupada repeated this teaching so often, I think it bears repeating here, that the Srimad Bhagavatam is the perfect theistic science. It explains the absolute truth. We heard on Monday from Chaitanya Charitamrita about this 11th verse in the 2nd chapter of the 1st canto. Vadanti tat tattvavidas tattvam yajnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti shabdyate. That the absolute truth is non-dual. There's no qualitative difference between the subject and the object in the absolute truth, Srila Prabhupada explains. And so we've been warned, Srila Prabhupada repeatedly says, if we want to get the full effect of reading about Krishna's Leela in the 10th canto, one has to proceed step by step and assimilate all the teachings of the first 9 cantos and really understand the science of God, really understand the tattva, the absolute truth, understand how we are in duality, what non-duality is. In the 11th canto, Kavi Yogendra says, Vayang dutiyang abhinibesha tatsyad ishan apetasya viparyayo asmriti. And that this is tanmaya yato. This is due to illusion that fear arises when we begin to become absorbed in something that appears to be separate from Krishna. That's how we falsely identify with a material body. Material things are different from spiritual things. We have to be able to distinguish between matter and spirit. We, Tatastha Shakti, are of the Krishna's superior energy. His inferior energy is material energy. It's illusory energy. It appears to be separate from Krishna. It appears to be inert, temporary. It's actually eternal, but it's always changing. And we're trying to enjoy it, and therefore we don't see it for what it really is. Instead of using it for Krishna's service, We try to use it independently of Krishna. And therefore, we're really separated from Krishna. Gopis are never actually separated from Krishna. But if we think, if you're like me, you open your phone and you see something about some news going on, the war in Ukraine or whatever, and you say, oh, nectar, now I'm gonna really enjoy reading about this thing. Then that's our fallen condition. We're under the illusory energy, and we can't experience pure devotional service. We can't understand and know Krishna in his full power and glory. Saveda datum padaving parasya duranta viryasya ritangapane. This verse is beautiful. Yomaya santatrana pritya saroja bhajeta yatpada saroja gandham, from the 3rd chapter, that only those who render unmotivated, uninterrupted devotional service to Krishna can know his to the lotus feet, which have the fragrance of lotuses, of Krishna, who carries the chariot wheel in his hand, can know him, his full power and glory as the creator of everything. So the Srimad Bhagavatam hits at the absolute truth. Dharma projitakaitavocha paramonia matsaranam satam vedyam vastavamatra vastu shivadam tapa trayon mulanam. The absolute truth is described as reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. And we have to, if we want to get the benefit of hearing and discussing Srimad Bhagavatam, we have to understand all of these teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam. The Leelas are there, they're very enlivening. Narada Muni actually told Vyasadeva that he had to describe the Leelas of Lord Krishna and his pure devotees and show the face of pure devotional service. But they won't be understood or appreciated unless we have the foundation of understanding that we're not the body, that we're spirit soul, that our actual position is to worship Krishna, serve Krishna, eternal servants of Krishna, that we have to overcome, we have to act according to regulative principles to overcome the lust that is in our hearts and creating, Prabhupada says, inebriety. The 3 modes of material nature are, our body is really made of the 3 modes of material nature. It's acting in accordance with the senses are interacting with their objects in accordance with the interaction of these modes. And we have to understand these basic things. We're very fortunate to be in Kali Yuga. Many people think, what's so great about Kali Yuga? Everyone's quarreling, everyone is hypocritical. But the great quality is that Lord Chaitanya has come. He's distributed this Harinam Sankirtan. Just by chanting the holy names of Krishna, we can achieve what the great yogis who could actually practice the regular principles can achieve, and actually we achieve even more than that. Lord Chaitanya is distributing this sublime love, this mood of Vrindavan, and we have to take that up. So, Bhaktisiddhanta actually, I heard from reading Bhakti-Vikas Swami's biography of Bhaktisiddhanta that actually even his sannyasi disciples, he told them not to discuss these 5 chapters of Srimad Bhagavatam. And I saw today, if I can get this up, that in one of Srila Prabhupada's lectures, I'll just quote from a lecture that he gave in Gorakhpur in February 14th, 1971. He was lecturing on 6th canto, chapter 3, verses 22 through 23. And he said, when you discuss Srimad Bhagavatam on the philosophical point, they also do not attend. If you discuss on the philosophy of Upanishad and Vedanta, they'll not attend. I have seen it. Therefore, those who are sahajas, they simply go to the pastimes of Lord Krishna with the gopis. Other things, oh no, that is not Krishna's pastimes. That is not Krishna's pastimes. That is, they differentiate the absolute activities of the absolute. That is called sahajya. The sahajias will never read Bhagavad Gita, will never read. And then sarcastically he says, because they have been elevated to the mellows of conjugal love, Therefore, they have no interest in Bhagavad Gita. They say, or when you discuss Srimad Bhagavatam on the philosophical point, Janmadhyasya, Srimad Bhagavatam 111, they also do not attend. If you discuss on the philosophy of Upanishad and Vedanta, they'll not attend. I have seen it. In Radhakunda, sometime in 1934, my Guru Maharaj was living, and he was discussing Upanishad. He was discussing Upanishad regularly, and the Babajis, there are many Babajis in Radhakunda. First of all, they came, that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur has come, such a learned scholar and the establisher of Gaudiya Math. So out of curiosity, they came, and when they saw that he was discussing Upanishad, gradually they stopped coming. So my Guru Maharaj recommended that these people are not living in Radhakund, they are living in Narakakund. I have heard it personally. So we often hear Srila Prabhupada describing how Bhaktisiddhanta condemned the professional Bhagavatam reciters who may have memorized the verses and sing them very beautifully in different tunes, but because they're appealing, even they themselves may not be following the regulative principles, and they're trying to appeal to people who aren't sincere devotees, who think it's some kind of pious activity to come here, the Srimad Bhagavatam, and they jump right to these intimate leelas, and the people who aren't sincere devotees, they won't be able to understand it. They may think like they're also attracted. The same people might then go and watch some movie about some love story, Titanic or whatever. They become attracted to that, and they think these kind of discussions are on the same level. But there's actually a vast, vast difference. That this Srimad Bhagavatam is meant for and enjoyed by Paramahamsas who are completely liberated and free from all material conceptions. And those Paramahamsas, they won't take any interest in Romeo and Juliet or other Crow literature like that. So, nevertheless, we are to discuss, or we are to at least read these pastimes. We should read, we were hearing last night from Jayadvaita Swami that reading Srimad Bhagavatam is best done in the company of other devotees. We can read if we're alone, we can read Prabhupada's books, and that's okay, and study them, that's okay, and memorize shastras, memorize verses. But it's most productive if we're in an association of sincere devotees, faithful devotees. And Shukadeva Goswami himself, at the end of this Rasa Lila portion, in chapter 33 of the 10th canto, text 39, he says that anyone who faithfully hears or describes the Lord's playful affairs with the young gopis of Vrindavan will attain the Lord's pure devotional service. Thus he will quickly become sober and conquer lust, the disease of the heart. So once again, the word sober, Prabhupada used the word inebriety, which means lack of soberness. It means intoxication. That when we're inebriated, we see things, our perception is wrong. Therefore, you can't drive a car. Your reactions are slow, and you perceive things in a distorted way. And similarly, those of us who are affected by the disease of lust in the heart, which has captured these sitting places of the senses, the mind, the intelligence, it covers our real knowledge. Eternally, the soul is Satchit Ananda, it has full knowledge. But due to our contact with material nature and the development of lust, because we contemplate the objects of the senses, dhyayato vishayan pungsang sangasteshu pajayate, sangat sanjayate kama, and then kamat krodha vijayate, etc. We forget Krishna because we see material objects and we become attached to them, and from that attachment we lust. And this disease can be cured by understanding Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, and by actually practicing, following the regulative principles, following the orders of the spiritual master, chanting at least 16 rounds of Hare Krishna Maha Mantra a day, serving this transcendental movement meant to distribute Krishna consciousness and the teachings of Lord Chaitanya all over the world. And then we can begin to understand and relish these pastimes and take the cure that will really work. Satang prasangat mama virya sangvado. Kapila Dev tells Devahuti that by hearing in the association of devotees, bhavantarhit karna rasayana kataha, there's a medicine comes in through the ears and into our heart, and tajjoshnara shvapavargavarni shratir bhaktir anukramishiti. So eventually we're trying for this prema bhakti. I, like Abhiram Prabhu yesterday confessed, I'm also still have many anarthas, and I haven't come to the stage of that kind of attachment to Krishna that I can't bear to be separated him for a moment. But the gopis have this attachment, and we see this in this verse. We see that Krishna, to punish their pride, get them ready for the Rasa Lila. They were, at first, Krishna discouraged them, said, go back home. And what time do I have here? Oh, here. And, but then when they pleaded with him so feelingly that how cruel he was being, that they had given everything, their whole selves, their whole lives, they'd given up their families, their duties, their reputations, everything, just because of the sound of his flute, they had come there, and how can he reject them and instruct him? Even though his instructions were good moral instructions for normal people. Women shouldn't run off to some paramour in the night. That's abominable and very degrading. But then, in kindness, after hearing their sincere plea and knowing their hearts, he did embrace them and kiss them as they wanted. But then when they started feeling like we are the most fortunate women in the universe, Krishna decided to curb their pride by disappearing. And then what happened? We see how these great devotees responded to Krishna's disappearance. They can't stop thinking of Krishna even for a minute. The gopis cursed Lord Brahma that their eyes have to blink. He created a body that when their eyes blink, they can't see Krishna for that split second. And now he's disappeared from the rasa dance, and they've become like mad after finding him. They can't tolerate it. This feeling of separation is so strong. And here they've joined together like a band. Together they're looking for Krishna, and they're going and they're asking the trees. And this brings to mind 2 points. One point is that ordinarily people wouldn't ask directions from a tree if you didn't know where you were going, or you wanted to know some information. So ordinarily we have that discrimination that the tree's not going to talk to us. But because of their strong attachment to Krishna, they've lost that kind of discrimination. They're acting like madwomen, and they'll ask anyone, everyone, wherever they can find it. So that's one thing, is that it shows their strong eagerness. But another thing, and it says right in the verse, that Krishna is present as the super soul inside and outside of all created things, just like the sky. And in non-duality, everything is of the same quality. So here in Vrindavan, the trees, the birds, the animals, the dogs, and the rascal monkeys, everything is spiritual. And so it's quite appropriate that in their mad love for Krishna, they see Krishna everywhere, or they see a chance to get Krishna everywhere. And this is an example of how pure devotional service, one overcomes duality. There's no separateness. They're not identifying with material bodies and trying to exploit material inert things, but instead they're in the spiritual world, or in pure spiritual consciousness of non-duality, that they're approaching even the trees, and later we'll hear they approach the earth and other things like that. It's an example. Krishna, in the chapter in the Uddhava Gita, when he talks about pure devotional service, he talks about how the devotees bow down to everyone, even to dogs. They're bowing down, and seeing everything like that. And while we're here in the Dham, we should very much practice, seeing everything. Everything is worshipable here. Everyone, even the rickshawala who tries to charge you 500 rupees to go to Madan Mohan temple, he's still part of Krishna's abode, and everything is, not that you have to pay him that much, you should get the correct price, but you should still not, be very careful not to get angry at anyone. These can be offenses to the holy Dham itself. The pilgrims who come here, they're also part of the Dham while they're present here, and it's a transcendental land of Krishna. So I think at this point I'll take some discussion and questions, and we have one right there. Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
For your presentation. We hear regularly that to enter to dive into these more confidential aspects of Srimad Bhagavatam, we must distinguish between matter and spirit, and you mentioned that in the class. So I heard this many times, and now my mind comes to inquire, what is this? Who is distinguishing, and what is being distinguished? Like, where is it happening? Is it the purified intelligence? Is that the soul? And what is the material mind? What is, could elaborate a bit on that?
So, yes, the purified intelligence, we have to purify our intelligence by chanting Hare Krishna, by following the regular principles, by serving. We have to purify our intelligence to understand when we're listening to the literature, Tadvag Visargo Janataga Viplavo, these two verses where the swan-like people take pleasure in the literature about Krishna, even though it might not be properly composed. Of course, Srimad Bhagavatam is beautifully composed, but even if improperly composed, Shrinvanti Gayanti Grinanti Sadhava, they take it into their hearts. But in material consciousness, we're trying to enjoy through our senses. So material lust, when we watch a movie about a boy meets girl, or a rom-com or whatever, or we hear popular songs, what is our popular music about? Almost all the time, it's about either a boy and girl meeting and how happy they are in love, or more commonly, how one of them has left the other one, and they're in despair. These are aspects of real love in the spiritual world, in separation and so forth. But the perverted reflection, people are thinking about their material bodies and their material senses, and the material emotions that are involved under the three modes of material nature, inebriety, as I was saying before. The pastimes of Krishna are completely free from that inebriety. They're not touched at all by the modes of passion and ignorance, and they're not about, sensual activities at all. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami gives the example of gold and iron, that they both have some qualities the same. They're both metal. They both can feel hard, and they, whatever. But gold is brilliant and shiny and beautiful because it's of a completely different quality than black iron. And so that's what's distinguishing, is that, when we hear these things, if we think that this is a beautiful love story, like if you watch, I've seen Indian, I shouldn't be watching cinema, but I've seen some Hindi cinema, and the hero is struggling with all these difficulties in the material world, and then he sings to his girlfriend, I am Krishna and you are my Radha. And she sings, I am Radha and you are my Krishna. It's nonsense, it's offensive. And Bhaktisiddhanta was very strong against this that we should understand, we should appreciate what valuable treasure we have in Srimad Bhagavatam, and not confuse it as if it were some kind of mundane literature, sensual literature. And the people who aren't sincere devotees and hear about it, naturally they're attracted to this part of the literature because they like love stories and they're sensuous people. They want to enjoy their senses, and they're not really that interested in the philosophy of, what is spirit, what is matter, how is the absolute truth. Krishna is in one sense everything. He has multifarious energies, and the absolute truth is actually full of variety, but at the same time it's completely non-dual. That kind of understanding we really need to have to appreciate the emotions of the gopis. And to really appreciate them, we have to become advanced devotees that can experience similar emotions by actually being free from all anarthas, having a strong taste, asakti, bhava, and prema, like that. So that we were talking yesterday about work hard, samadhi later, or deserve then desire. The point is that in our current state, Bhaktisiddhanta emphasized that we're the seen, not the seer, that we shouldn't try to see Krishna, but we should try to act in such a way that Krishna will want to see us. We should realize that when we come to take darshan of the deities, we're giving them, that we're putting ourselves before them so they will see us. And we can actually, when we pay our obeisances to Srila Prabhupada, our spiritual master, at night, and we should take an inventory. How well have I done today? How well have I chanted? How well have I served? And that's the way to actually purify the heart so that our intelligence is so purified that these things will shine. There's a verse, actually, Jayadvaita Swami was reciting this verse yesterday also, I believe, from Lord Kapila Dev. But I don't know the Sanskrit. But it was that when we hear the activities of the Leela of Krishna correctly, it acts like this autumnal rains on muddy pools of water that it clarifies the water. So it'll clarify our mind so that, and in the Brahma Samhita it says that the glory of Krishna's pastimes are ever triumphantly dominating the mundane as recollected in the minds of recollecting souls. And Bhaktisiddhanta says that only people with pure, clear, intelligent, pure, clear minds, that they can actually recollect these pastimes, which are, tremendously more glorious than anything any mundane poet or novelist or something can imagine. Gopal Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, thank you for your class. And additive to this Prabhu's question, if we want to purify our consciousness, Krishna gives us the directives in Bhagavad Gita, and he says that as you surrender to me, I give you the intelligence by which you can come to me. So, as long as one is harboring any ulterior motives or desires, then just like Krishna ran away from the gopis and he was evasive to them, his was a trick on them because their sincerity was so strong. But for us, we have to rid our minds of anarthas. So anarthas are the things that are keeping us all here, and we have many in different forms, and we must surrender to Krishna. And then what does Krishna give us? He gives us the intelligence by which we can come to him. And that is our goal, to go to Krishna.
Yes, very nice point. Dadami buddhi yogam tesham satata yuktanam. For those who are always engaged in bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam. And then he destroys with the shining lamp of knowledge, the darkness born of ignorance in our hearts. And so we have to take, this process really works. I heard that Jayananda said that before he passed away. He was glowing, he had leukemia, and he said, this really works. That we will one day actually experience these higher spiritual emotions. Maharaj.
Well, I'm just holding the microphone.
Oh, please. Oh, here, Pachigoda has some comment.
I need it back. Generally, when someone studies the Vedas or performs austerities, it can be considered advanced, and that Brahmana in the Vrindavan temple in South India, his guru ordered him to read Bhagavad Gita, but he was illiterate, and Lord Chaitanya appreciated his love and devotion. Sometimes said the gopis are also that they were not great Vedantists or performed austerities, although we know they're great mystics from previous lives. So is it one's enthusiasm to read, study, and perform the rules and regulations, and then some, is it, is Krishna just, I know the sincerity, he sees the sincerity behind it, but it appears as though that the Brahman is getting causeless mercy because of his strict following the Guru's order, and the gopis just somehow fell in love with Krishna automatically without really undergoing the rigor of study.
Yes, that Brahmana was following his guru's order to read Bhagavad Gita, even though he was barely literate and he couldn't really understand the verses, but he actually had realization of Krishna. So Lord Chaitanya asked him, then why are you crying? Okay, you're reading, your guru ordered you, but you can't read it, but why are you crying? And he said, I'm crying because I can only think that Krishna, who's the Supreme Godhead, is so kind to his devotee Arjuna that he's become the chariot driver and he's serving his devotee. And then Lord Chaitanya said, yeah, you actually understand. He embraced him and said, you're the true understand. So it's not exactly an intellectual process. We're encouraged to read Prabhupada's books, and we're encouraged to distribute them profusely. That's one of our missions. Srila Prabhupada said, actually, that our temples are meant like to be bases, military bases, where we're dropping the bombs of these transcendental literatures, Prabhupada's transcendental realizations, his pure explanation of these books on everyone. And not everybody is going to be a scholar. The gopis, there's 4 categories of gopis. Most of the gopis are actually Krishna's eternal associates who descend with him from the spiritual world, from the unmanifested Goloka Vrindavan. But some are Vedas personified and rishis. Rishis who saw Lord Ramachandra and wanted to, and saw the beauty, and were given the opportunity to participate in Krishna's Leela in Brajabhumi. And then some of them are very, very advanced devotees who have attraction for Krishna in that conjugal mellow, and who've now, to put a finishing touch on all their devotional service, have been allowed to participate in Krishna's Bhoma Leela before becoming eternally members of the spiritual world. But they appear like simple village girls, rural village cowherd girls, and it's not, big scholarship is not important. Krishna is understood through pure devotion in the heart. It's the only way to understand him. Right? Bhaktyamam abhijanati yavanyaschashmi tattvataha. Krishna is only understood through pure devotional service, as I quoted before, Saveda datung padaving prasya, that it's only through pure devotional service that we understand him, and to practice pure devotional service we have to take shelter of a spiritual master and follow his orders and guidance faithfully. And so that I started the verse, Bhaya Dvitiyam, and it says Tanmaya Yato Buddha Abhijet Tang Bhaktyai, what is it, Bhaktyai Ke, someone, Bhaktyai Kesha, anyway, Guru Devatat So we have to have unalloyed, one-pointed devotion to Lord Krishna, who is represented by the bona fide spiritual master. And not everyone is going to actually be a scholar. But if we chant Hare Krishna correctly and hear it correctly, just the holy name itself contains all the forms, names, leelas, qualities of Krishna, and everything will be fully understood to a pure devotee, even without any need for philosophical discussion. But philosophical discussion is good for us to help us discriminate properly.
That point is very accurate. We know that the Brahmins who were engaged in yajnas, and the cowboys went to them to get food, and they were too engaged in their sacrifices to reciprocate with the wills of the cowboys. But the wives of these Brahmins, who were also simple women, they hadn't studied Vedanta. They immediately reciprocated. And it's like with the gopis. The gopis are 100% always thinking and chanting the names of Krishna and thinking of his pastimes. So Lord Chaitanya gave us this mission, and he gave us 10 offenses that we must avoid when we chant Hare Krishna. And if we can condition ourselves by repetition again and again and again and again, chanting Krishna's name, as you said, all of the wisdom that is necessary will be revealed to us in our heart just by chanting Hare Krishna.
Jai. Yes, Krishna can't be understood through study of the Vedas, through scholarship, but through devotional service, one is not bereft. Vedeshu yagyeshu tapaksu chaiva daneshu yat punya palam pradishtam. One is not bereft of the results of all the pious activities and the giving in charity and the performing of austerities and atyeti tat sarvamatan vidimva yogi parang sthanam upaiti chadyam. But yet at the same time, we were talking yesterday about work now, samadhi later, and we should understand that Srila Prabhupada emphasized that our work should not just be to develop a nice temple where a lot of people come and they give money and we can eat and sleep and chant Hare Krishna, that the mission of ISKCON is nothing other than to save the whole world, that this Srimad Bhagavatam should become required reading for any student. It should become, and properly understood, this ISKCON culture, Krishna culture, should become the dominant culture in the earth and in the universe. And sometimes we think, oh, this is just, hyperbole, exaggeration, or whatever. But Srila Prabhupada took this very seriously, and he did what his godbrothers were not able to do, which is actually create a truly international movement with temples on every continent. I don't know if we're in Antarctica yet, but we should be there too. But one time, Badri Narayan Maharaj was telling a story that early on, in the early days, he had, for some reason, he had to go to Borneo somewhere, and he thought that at least I'll be able to distribute Prabhupada's books there, and they won't have them. And when he got to this longhouse place in this remote village where headhunters are around and stuff like that, the guy at the reception desk was reading Sri Ishopanishad. So that's our mission. And to do that, and Prabhupada established the Bhaktivedanta Institute. We had this nice Brahmin gentleman yesterday who was studying in college, who was studying science and philosophy, And it's bewildering to people, you know. Our mundane science, although it's very limited in what it can explain, it does support a technology that people find useful. They find useful in material activities, but we also find them useful in Krishna consciousness. And I wouldn't be able to be here if I didn't get on an airplane. You know, how long would it take to get on a boat? And even the boats would not be sailboats. So, Bhaktivedanta Institute is to establish Krishna consciousness among the intellectual leaders of society as well. And to do that, we do need, you know, people who are qualified scientists. I'm not a scientist by any means, but we need people, devotees, just like we have devotees who have all different kinds of services, and some of them are congregational members that have good jobs and donate lots of money to the temples and to support the Sankirtan movement. And even mundane scholarship can have its use in satisfying the mission of Krishna consciousness, but it also can be dangerous. It can make someone proud. They might feel better than a devotee who doesn't have that kind of training and qualification. That's offensive. And of course, real scholarship is to understand Krishna and to read Srimad Bhagavatam and to chant the holy name with love. So I appreciate all the points. They're very good points everyone's making.
When early in the class you mentioned that even if someone reads something that is not properly composed, the essence of the message will still be related. So I can remember when I joined ISKCON, we had no books, and the only book we had was the book Prabhupada brought from India. And when I went to the temple, they gave me these 3 books, big books like this, and they said, this is our Bible, and we study from this, and we will learn everything we need to know. And of course I was shocked at first because I was practically illiterate, and then Sanskrit and English and transliterations and all of these things were there. I stumbled through as best I could, and even though Prabhupada had many grammatical mistakes, any question that had ever concerned me was immediately revealed in the first few chapters.
It's a fact, Srila Prabhupada says that even one line or even one word can give you everything of his books. And Vaisheshika, when he distributes books and people say, oh, I don't read books, or he tells them, just having this book on your bookshelf gives you all good fortune. I don't know how much time we have, we're kind of over, but I wanted to say about that time, I met a devotee on the campus of the University of Miami when I was about 15 years old. And his name was Akinchana Das, and I've never been able to find him again, but he was sort of a Pradarshika guru for me. And it's a different one. It's a different one. I've asked him. But he told me, that just kind of the humorous thing, that, we're supposed to speak, Prabhupada spoke authoritatively, quoting the Sanskrit, a praman, the evidence that what I'm saying is backed up by actual Shastra and great devotees and so forth. So he said that, they didn't have any books, so they didn't know how to preach. So he would say, and Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Nama Om Vishnupadaya, we are not this body. Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale, we are spirit soul. So I think we're supposed to stop now. If there's anything else, Prabhu?
No, thank you.
Hare Krishna. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Akruranath Prabhu ke.